I am Camille Foster, 38 years old, a Black woman who spent the last decade navigating the shadowed corridors of power in Washington, D.C. without drawing unnecessary attention. This morning, the federal government building loomed like a fortress under the crisp autumn sun, its bulletproof glass windows casting fractured reflections on the polished marble floors. I strode through the main lobby in my simple black blouse, tailored slacks, and low-heeled shoes, practical, unassuming. My badge read Regional Strategic Assistant, a deliberately bland title that masked my true role. In my hand, a slim briefcase held classified documents, and my phone was silenced, as always during approach to secure zones. The air hummed with the quiet efficiency of bureaucrats and security personnel shuffling papers or murmuring into earpieces. I nodded politely to a few familiar faces, analysts from lower clearance levels, but kept my pace steady. Today was critical. A briefing with General Rutherford on Operation Raven Echo, a high-stakes national security protocol I'd been coordinating for months. My heart beat with the familiar rhythm of anticipation, not fear. I'd learned long ago that in these spaces, poise was my armor. As I reached the security gate leading to the military wing, two young guards, both white, in their early 20s, with crisp uniforms and stern expressions, stepped forward. The taller one held up a hand. "Halt right there. Who authorized you for this sector?" I presented my government-issued ID calmly, my voice even and professional. "Camille Foster. I have a scheduled meeting with General Rutherford. It's been cleared through the system." The shorter guard squinted at my badge, his face twisting into a skeptical frown. "Assistant, huh? Nobody notified us. You'll have to wait in the holding area. This is high clearance only, not for just anyone wandering in." The words hit like a subtle slap, laced with that familiar undercurrent of doubt I'd faced since my early days in intelligence, being dismissed not for lack of credentials, but for not fitting the expected mold. I felt a flicker of frustration in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. The lobby's hum seemed to pause, a few passers-by glancing our way. This wasn't new. It was the quiet erosion of respect that chipped away at you over time. But today, with the weight of the briefing pressing, I couldn't afford delays. The conflict had arrived uninvited, turning a routine entry into a battlefield of unspoken biases. I stood there, my ID still extended, as the shorter guard's skepticism morphed into outright dismissal. His eyes narrowed, scanning me from head to toe, the way I'd been scanned 1,000 times before, reduced to assumptions based on my skin, my unassuming attire. "Assistant, huh?" he repeated, his tone dripping with condescension. "Look, lady, if you're here for some low-level briefing, fine, but this sector's restricted. Step aside and wait like everyone else." I felt the familiar sting, that quiet erosion of dignity I'd learned to navigate since my first internship in D.C., where my ideas were credited to others and my presence questioned in boardrooms. But I kept my voice steady, professional. "I'm not a secretary," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'm here to handle the security handoff for the briefing. Check the system again, it's cleared." The taller guard let out a sharp laugh that echoed off the marble walls, drawing more eyes from passing staff. "Then definitely no," he snorted. "Don't play action hero here. You know where you are? This is Federal Command Central, not some office pool. Move over." His words hung in the air like a challenge, laced with that unspoken implication. You don't belong. A couple of security personnel nearby paused, one whispering to another. Probably a mix-up. "Look at her. She's straight out of admin support." Their chuckles were muffled but audible, turning the lobby into a stage where I was the unwitting performer in a tired script of exclusion. The air grew heavier, charged with the cold undercurrent of public humiliation. Heads turned subtly, analysts with clipboards, officers in press suits, all witnessing the spectacle without intervening. It wasn't just about access. It was an assault on my worth, a reminder that no matter my credentials, my blackness often spoke first, louder than any title. I stepped aside as instructed, my briefcase clutched tighter, refusing to let my face betray the anger simmering beneath. Instead, I sat in the waiting area, pulling out my phone. With deliberate calm, I typed a quick message to my contact in command. Delayed at gate. Confirm clearance. No one noticed the subtle action, their assumptions blinding them to the storm I could unleash. The lobby's hum resumed, but the insult lingered, a fresh scar on an old wound, fueling my resolve to turn this moment into something they couldn't ignore. I sat in the waiting area, the cold metal chair pressing against my back, a stark reminder of how these spaces were designed for discomfort rather than welcome. The lobby's murmurs continued around me, keyboards clacking, doors hissing open and shut, but I tuned it out, focusing on the screen of my phone. The message I'd sent would trigger protocols. I knew that much. At 38, after years in the shadows of intelligence work, I'd mastered the art of patience amid provocation. It wasn't resignation, it was strategy. Let them underestimate me. It's what had carried me through covert ops in hostile territories, where one wrong glance could unravel everything. Minutes ticked by, each one amplifying the guard's smug satisfaction. The taller one leaned against the gate, chatting with his partner about weekend plans, their voices carrying just enough to reach me. I didn't flinch. Instead, I reviewed mental notes for the briefing. Threat vectors in Raven Echo, potential breaches in the chain of command. This delay was minor compared to real crises I defused. Then the shift came. A team of military police approached from the inner corridor, their boots echoing sharply on the marble. One carried a tablet, scanning it urgently. He stopped near the guards, his expression tightening. "Hold on, this is Camille Foster?" His colleague nodded, voice dropping to a whisper. "She's the coordinator for Special Ops Strategy, Raven Echo. Command refers to her as..." Before he could finish, a static crackle erupted from the radio on his belt. "Confirm status. Has Black Talon arrived at the facility yet?" The words hung in the air like a detonation. The lobby fell into a profound hush, conversations halting mid-sentence. The guards froze, their earlier confidence evaporating as color drained from their faces. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. "Black Talon. That's her?" As realization dawned, I'd heard the codename whispered in secure rooms, a moniker earned from precision strikes that dismantled threats before they materialized. I lifted my head slowly, meeting their stares. No words escaped my lips. None were needed. My eyes conveyed everything. The quiet endurance of someone perpetually undervalued, the unyielding focus that had propelled me to this level. It wasn't anger blazing there, but a serene certainty, sharp as a blade poised in the dark. In that moment, the power dynamic inverted, their doubt exposed as the fragile illusion it always was. As the radio's crackle faded, leaving a heavy silence in its wake, I remained seated, observing the guards' reactions shift from shock to stubborn denial. Their faces hardened, refusing to yield to the evidence broadcast moments ago. The taller one muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to catch. "Probably a name mix-up. Look at her, doesn't fit the profile at all." His words carried that dismissive edge I'd encountered too often, reducing my presence to something incongruous, unworthy of the codename that had just echoed through the air. His partner shrugged, crossing his arms defiantly. "Yeah, maybe she's back office tech support or something. Black Talon sounds impressive, but let's double-check the logs anyway." They huddled over their console, tapping screens with feigned authority, their whispers growing into audible skepticism that drew glances from nearby staff. It was as if the confirmation hadn't registered, their biases forming an impenetrable barrier against the truth. Deeper inside the facility, beyond my view but within earshot of the open channels, the ripple effect intensified. In the security coordination room, a hub of monitors and hurried voices, a mid-level officer replayed the gate footage. I couldn't see it, but I imagined the scene, my calm presentation of credentials, their brusque rejection. He snorted, leaning back in his chair to address his colleagues. "Everyone's claiming special ops status these days?" Types a few reports in a cubicle and suddenly thinks she's elite clearance. His tone mocked the very idea, eliciting nods and chuckles from the group. One added, "Exactly, probably handles data entry, not real fieldwork. We see this all the time." Their commentary fueled the growing undercurrent of doubt, spreading like whispers through the vents. A nearby analyst paused her typing, overhearing the exchange, and chimed in softly to a coworker. Command must have slipped up. She looks more like support staff than someone running classified ops. The words stung, even from afar, reinforcing the invisible walls I'd dismantled countless times before. At 38, I'd risen through ranks where such judgments were routine, but here, in this fortress of national defense, they amplified the isolation. Yet I stayed composed, my fingers drumming lightly on my briefcase, knowing this escalation was merely the prelude to revelation. Their added fuel only heightened the impending blaze, turning a simple delay into a testament to entrenched prejudices that refused to dissipate, even in the face of irrefutable signals. I remained in the waiting area, the weight of their lingering doubts pressing like an invisible barrier. The guards' mutterings had ignited a chain reaction, their words seeping into the facility's atmosphere, where officers and staff exchanged knowing glances. At 38, I'd faced this erosion of credibility before, in debriefings where my strategies were second-guessed, or field ops where allies hesitated because of unspoken prejudices. But here, in this bastion of national security, the stakes felt amplified, each whisper chipping at the foundation I'd built through relentless precision. My fingers moved with deliberate ease over the phone screen, pulling up the secure email chain. The subject line glowed clearly. Detailed agenda for Special Command Briefing, designation, Black Talon. It outlined the session's protocols, my role as lead coordinator, and clearance directives from the Joint Chiefs. I didn't forward it or escalate digitally. That would come later if needed. Instead, I set the device on the small table between us, rotating it so the display faced the guards directly. The taller one glanced over, his posture stiffening slightly, but he averted his eyes quickly, as if acknowledging it would shatter his stance. In a voice low and measured, devoid of any edge that might provoke escalation, I addressed them. If confirmation is still required, contact General Rutherford directly. I'll grant another 5 minutes. The suggestion hung there, simple yet pointed, a gentle nudge toward resolution without confrontation. I knew the general's line was monitored, and a call would trigger an immediate trace back to this gate, exposing their oversight. My tone carried no heat, no accusation. It was the calm of someone who'd orchestrated takedowns from afar, where patience outmaneuvered aggression every time. They exchanged uneasy looks, the shorter one fidgeting with his radio, but not activating it. Around us, the lobby's rhythm faltered, staff slowing their steps, sensing the undercurrent of tension. One analyst nearby paused her conversation, her eyes darting to my phone screen before widening in subtle recognition. I leaned back slightly, crossing my legs, my briefcase resting at my feet like a silent sentinel. This wasn't about proving myself in the moment. It was about letting the system reveal the truth. The 5-minute window I'd offered ticked down, each second building anticipation, as if the air itself held its breath for the inevitable shift. In those instants, I reflected on past missions, covert insertions where one misstep meant failure, and drew strength from the knowledge that endurance, not outburst, had always been my sharpest tool. From my vantage in the waiting area, the lobby's sterile hum persisted. Elevator dings, muffled conversations, the occasional rustle of papers. I glanced at my watch. The 5-minute grace period I'd extended was halfway gone. Internally, I mapped contingencies. If they didn't act, I'd initiate protocol override myself, a quiet escalation that would loop in oversight channels. Experience had taught me that in these environments, where hierarchies loomed like invisible fortresses, timing was everything. Rushing bred errors. Waiting exposed them. Then, a subtle anomaly disrupted the routine. Footsteps approached from the inner stairwell, crisp, authoritative, unlike the casual shuffle of lower staff. A senior security officer emerged, his uniform adorned with insignia denoting colonel-equivalent rank, his face lined from years in the field. He scanned the area briefly, his gaze landing on me with a flicker of recognition that sharpened into certainty. At 38, I'd crossed paths with figures like him in joint ops briefings, where my contributions often surprised those expecting less. "Ms. Foster," he said, striding over with purposeful urgency. His voice carried the gravel of command, but softened with deference as he extended a hand. "I wasn't aware you'd arrived. Apologies for any holdup. The coordination room is primed for you." I rose smoothly, accepting the handshake. "No issue, Colonel. Just a verification snag." He nodded, his expression tightening as he turned toward the guards, who straightened instinctively under his scrutiny. "We've received directives from Joint Chiefs. All access points should have been synced for her arrival." His tone shifted to steel. "Next time, if you're unsure about someone at this level, observe protocol. Verify silently before obstructing." The guards paled, the taller one stammering, "Sir, we didn't realize." "Precisely," the colonel cut in, his words precise as a scalpel. "That's the problem. Treat every entrant as potentially mission-critical until proven otherwise." He gestured for me to follow, leading toward the secure elevators. As we walked, he lowered his voice. "The General's team is assembled. Your input on Raven Echo's contingencies is pivotal. We've locked down the floor." Behind us, the guards exchanged stricken looks, their earlier bravado crumbling into hushed regret. The lobby's energy altered subtly. Whispers ceased, replaced by averted eyes and hurried movements. This unexpected intervention wasn't mere coincidence. It was the system's self-correction kicking in, a ripple from my earlier message. In that instant, the balance tipped, transforming delay into momentum. I stepped into the elevator beside him, the doors closing with a soft chime, sealing the chapter of doubt and propelling me toward the core where my expertise would redefine the narrative. As the elevator doors slid open on the 7th floor, I stepped into the command SAN, the air thick with the scent of polished steel and recycled oxygen, a sterile reminder of the high-stakes decisions made here daily. The colonel's escort had smoothed the initial barriers, but as I approached the coordination room's entrance, a young administrative clerk, mid-20s, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp with self-importance, positioned himself squarely in my path. His uniform was pristine, badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, but his stance screamed obstruction. "Excuse me," he said, his voice clipped and authoritative. "Only command officers or executive summaries personnel proceed directly into ops coordination." I halted, maintaining eye contact, my briefcase a steady weight at my side. "I'm designated as strategic lead for today's classified session," I replied evenly, drawing on the composure honed from years dissecting threats in dimly lit war rooms. He didn't budge, flipping through his clipboard with exaggerated slowness. "I don't have you on yesterday's roster. And 4 strategic support roles. Protocol requires holding in the antechamber. This is active operations, not auxiliary space." He emphasized support like a demotion, his tone laced with that familiar condescension, implying my place was peripheral, not pivotal. It echoed the gate incident, but sharper now, in this inner sanctum where egos guarded access like sentinels. I felt the tension coil tighter in my core. Not rage, but a calculated awareness of how such dismissals compounded, eroding efficiency in a field where seconds mattered. Around us, the hallway buzzed faintly, analysts hurrying with tablets, officers conferring in low tones. A few slowed, sensing the standoff, their curiosity adding invisible pressure. The clerk's persistence amplified the negativity, his body language, arms folded, feet planted wide, broadcasting doubt to anyone watching. "If there's an error," he added, voice rising slightly, "we'll sort it from out here. Can't risk unauthorized entry disrupting the chain." His words hung like a challenge, transforming the corridor into a gauntlet. I stood firm, mind racing through contingencies, the briefing's timeline, potential delays rippling into national protocols. This wasn't mere bureaucracy. It was a microcosm of the systemic hurdles I'd vaulted since entering intelligence, being sidelined not for incompetence, but for not matching preconceived visuals of authority. Yet I held back, letting the moment build, knowing revelation loomed. The clerk's escalating resistance only heightened the drama, turning a simple threshold into a battleground of unspoken hierarchies, where my next move could shatter the illusion. In that charged hallway, with the clerk's words still echoing like a barrier I couldn't yet breach, an external presence intervened. A colonel, silver-haired, his uniform etched with campaign ribbons from deployments I'd studied in classified dossiers, happened to pass by, his stride purposeful amid the corridor's controlled chaos. He paused mid-step, his eyes locking onto the scene, me standing firm, the clerk's clipboard a makeshift shield. For a few seconds, he assessed me, his brow furrowing in that way seasoned officers do when piecing together anomalies. Then, recognition sparked, transforming his neutral gaze into one of sharp awareness. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice carrying the gravel of authority honed in command centers. "Are you Black Talon?" I nodded subtly, offering no elaboration. Years in this world had taught me that silence often amplified impact more than explanations. The colonel's posture shifted, straightening further as he turned to the clerk, his tone laced with unyielding sternness. "You've just impeded the lead coordinator for Level 7 Special Operations under the National Command Authority, the one who's resolved 3 major security breaches in the past 24 months alone." The clerk's face drained of color, his clipboard trembling slightly in his grip. He stammered, I had no idea." His earlier confidence evaporated, replaced by a flustered retreat, eyes darting as if seeking an escape route in the polished walls. Around us, the hallway's subtle dynamics altered. Onlookers, analysts clutching secure drives, junior officers with earpieces, slowed their movements, their initial indifference giving way to hushed curiosity. Whispers circulated. "That's her. The one from the Echo protocols." One staffer, previously indifferent, now eyed me with a mix of awe and reassessment, the kind that comes when preconceptions shatter. The colonel's intervention had cracked the facade, inviting external scrutiny that questioned not just the clerk's judgment, but the underlying assumptions permeating these halls. I stood there, absorbing the shift without reaction, my mind already pivoting to the briefing's imperatives. This wasn't vindication yet. It was the prelude to exposure, where outsiders' growing doubt about the obstruction mirrored the deeper flaws in a system that too often defaulted to exclusion. The colonel's presence lingered, a catalyst ensuring the moment couldn't be dismissed, as he gestured for clearance overrides on his own device. In those instants, the tension peaked, the corridor transforming from a passageway into a theater of revelation, where one man's recognition began unraveling the threads of dismissal woven around me. I proceeded forward, the colonel's words still resonating in the corridor like a command that demanded obedience. The clerk stepped aside reluctantly, his clipboard now clutched like a shield against his own misjudgment. I didn't spare him a glance. My focus remained on the coordination room ahead, where real threats awaited analysis, not petty gatekeeping. But as I passed him, something compelled me to pause, just for a heartbeat, long enough to pivot slightly and meet his wide-eyed stare. In a voice low and unwavering, laced with the quiet authority forged from countless overlooked victories, I said, "Just because I'm not in uniform doesn't mean I'm not above your pay grade." The sentence landed like a precision strike, simple, unadorned, yet piercing the hallway's tension. No elaboration followed. None was required. The air thickened instantly, conversations halting as if an alarm had triggered. The colonel's eyebrows rose fractionally, a subtle nod acknowledging the weight of my restraint. Nearby, analysts froze mid-stride, their tablets forgotten, while junior staff exchanged furtive looks, the realization spreading like a digital virus through secure networks. From the periphery, a murmur broke the stasis. A staffer in the operations team, half hidden behind a partition, whispered to his partner, "That's her for real. Black Talon." The one general's name drop in every emergency drill. His voice carried just enough to amplify the shift, turning whispers into a cascade of reassessment. Heads turned, not with hostility now, but with a mix of awe and unease, as if my presence had rewritten the room's unspoken rules. The clerk's face crumpled, his earlier bravado dissolving into visible regret, hands trembling as he fumbled with his notes. The corridor, moments ago a conduit of routine dismissals, now pulsed with recalibration, staff straightening postures, eyes darting to confirm identities on their devices. My single utterance had fractured the facade, exposing the fragility of assumptions in this fortress of secrets. At 38, I'd uttered similar truths before, in debriefs where my insights dismantled entrenched errors, but here it felt amplified, a turning point that redefined not just access, but respect. I resumed my stride without looking back, the coordination door looming closer. The atmosphere had transformed, no longer obstructive. It parted before me like protocols yielding to clearance. In that suspended moment, the dynamics inverted fully, the underestimated becoming the undeniable, my words a catalyst that echoed beyond the walls, priming the facility for the revelations to come. With the corridor's stunned silence trailing behind me like an unspoken echo, I pushed through the double doors into the strategic briefing room on level 7. The space was alive with illumination, overhead panels casting a stark glow over banks of monitors, holographic displays flickering with encrypted data streams, and a long conference table ringed by high-backed chairs. The air hummed with the low whir of servers processing threat assessments, a symphony of urgency that sharpened my senses. This was the nerve center where national defenses were forged, and today, it awaited my orchestration of Raven Echo's vulnerabilities. Before I could fully orient, a figure emerged from the head of the table, General Rutherford himself, his frame broad and commanding in full dress blues, stars glinting on his shoulders like badges of battles won. He wasn't one for ceremony outside protocols, but his approach carried genuine warmth, striding forward with the confidence of a leader who'd trusted my counsel in prior crises. "Foster," he said, extending a firm hand and clapping my shoulder lightly, as if we were old field partners debriefing after a successful extraction. "We've been holding for you. No one maps contingencies like Black Talon. Your breakdown on the Echo protocols is what we need to lock this down." His words cut through any residual tension from the hallway, affirming my place without fanfare. I shook his hand, feeling the shift solidify, the room's energy pivoting from anticipation to alignment. Around the table, senior officers rose in unison. A brigadier with cyber ops patches, a rear admiral from naval intelligence, and analysts from allied agencies, each offering nods of respect. One, a lieutenant general I'd collaborated with on a prior breach simulation, inclined his head slightly. "Ma'am," he murmured, his tone laced with professional deference, eyes reflecting the recalibration I'd triggered moments ago. As I took my seat at the designated console, a large central screen ignited, projecting my profile in bold, secure fonts. Lead coordinator, Camille Foster, codename, Black Talon, priority, absolute classified. The display scrolled through clearance verifications, highlighting my oversight on 3 resolved incidents, each redacted for the room's eyes only. Whispers of acknowledgement rippled among the group, but Rutherford quelled them with a raised hand. "Let's begin," he commanded, signaling the session start. In that instant, the facility's earlier dismissals felt distant, overshadowed by this convergence of authority, my expertise now the fulcrum on which the briefing turned, transforming obstruction into operational momentum. As the briefing commenced, with maps and data projections illuminating the room's walls, a subtle alert tone pierced the focus murmurs. It emanated from the facility's internal comm system, broadcasting to every terminal and earpiece on the floor. "Urgent advisory," the automated voice intoned, crisp and authoritative. "Black Talon, designated special asset under National Defense Command, is actively leading the Level 7 session on this level. All personnel, maintain order and adhere strictly to directives from the Strategy Hub." The announcement rippled outward, transforming the building's rhythm in an instant. From my seat at the console, I sensed the wave through the secure feeds, corridors emptying slightly, staff halting mid-task as screens flashed the alert. Whispers erupted in the outer halls. "Black Talon. Here now." Eyes converged on the coordination doors, invisible to me but palpable in the sudden spike of network queries pinging my profile. Officers in adjacent offices paused reports, their curiosity manifesting as hurried glances toward monitors confirming my credentials. Down at the entry point, the 2 sentries from earlier stood rigid, their earlier dismissal now a haunting miscalculation. The taller one's radio crackled with the same message, his hand freezing mid-reach as comprehension dawned. His face slackened, whispers to his colleague turning frantic. That's her. We blocked Black Talon. Regret etched their features, postures deflating under the weight of protocol breach notifications likely flooding their stations. In the administrative wing, the clerk who'd barred my path retreated to a shadowed alcove, his clipboard abandoned on a desk. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the broadcast looped in his earpiece, each repetition underscoring his error. Colleagues nearby shot him sidelong looks, one murmuring, "You held up the lead on Echo? Command's going to review that footage." He fumbled for his terminal, fingers trembling over keys, the color leaching from his cheeks as oversight logs auto-flagged the incident. Throughout the structure, the revelation cascaded, analysts cross-referencing my codename with redacted files, juniors piecing together legends from secure briefings. I'd become the focal point, my understated arrival now a lesson in misperception. From the room's vantage, I monitored the surge in system accesses, a digital testament to the turnaround. No gloating stirred within me. This was merely the machinery of truth asserting itself, dismantling barriers one alert at a time. The facility, once a labyrinth of doubt, now aligned behind my lead, the public disclosure cementing my command in ways no argument ever could. Down in the security control hub, a floor below where I now directed the briefing's flow, the fallout unfolded like a scripted debrief of a failed op. I didn't witness it directly. My focus remained on the holographic threat models flickering before the assembled brass, but fragments reached me through the open channels of the facility's network, status updates pinging softly on my console. A major, his record spotless from decades in surveillance oversight, had initiated a routine audit of entry logs, prompted by the earlier alert. He pulled up the footage, crystal-clear feeds capturing my arrival, the guard's brusque halt, their skeptical tones dismissing my credentials as if they were forged notes. His expression darkened as the playback rolled, jaw tightening at the unnecessary delay imposed on a key asset. Swiveling in his chair, he summoned the 2 sentries via intercom, their boots scuffing as they entered the room, faces already etched with unease from the broadcast. "You 2 just obstructed someone with clearance eclipsing this entire sector's lead," he stated, voice flat but edged with reprimand. "Black Talon's oversight trumps local command. Did you even scan the badge properly?" The taller sentry shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. "We weren't aware of her status, sir," he murmured, his earlier assurance now a hollow echo. The major leaned forward, replaying a clip where their laughter punctuated my composure. "That's the crux," he countered sharply. "Precisely because you lacked full intel on her identity, protocol demands treating every individual as if they hold the potential to reshape the entire operation. Assumptions like yours compromise security. Next time, verify without obstruction or face review boards." Their postures slumped further, the shorter one rubbing his neck, as if to dispel mounting regret. Whispers from adjacent monitors filtered in, techs exchanging notes on the incident's ripple. They stalled Black Talon. "That's career suicide." The major dismissed them with a curt wave, logging the breach for formal inquiry, his report noting patterns of unchecked bias in entry protocols. Upstairs, as I outlined fallback scenarios for Raven Echo, a subtle notification confirmed the audit's initiation, a quiet vindication threading through the session's intensity. The clerk from the hallway fared no better. Isolated in his station, he fielded a direct query from oversight, his responses faltering under scrutiny. "I followed outdated lists," he admitted over comms, voice cracking. But the reviewing officer pressed, "Lists don't excuse dismissal. Learn to adapt or relocate." Their collapses weren't spectacles of ruin, but measured dismantlings, each consequence a lesson etched into the system's framework, ensuring future encounters bore the mark of this day's reversal. 3 hours dissolved in the briefing room's intensity, where I distilled the final contingencies for Raven Echo into a cohesive national safeguard plan. Generals and analysts leaned in during my summation, their nods affirming the strategies I'd honed through sleepless nights and encrypted simulations. As the session adjourned, handshakes circulated, Rutherford's grip firm with unspoken gratitude, others murmuring appreciations for the clarity I'd injected into potential chaos. I gathered my notes, briefcase snapping shut like a period on the ordeal. Exiting into the corridor, the space felt transformed. No lingering stares of skepticism. The once bustling hallway now carried a subdued quiet, staff averting eyes or offering subtle nods as I passed. Footfalls echoed softly on the tile, a far cry from the earlier blockade. The air, previously thick with dismissal, now hummed with a reluctant respect, whispers hushed, postures straightened in my wake. It wasn't triumph surging through me, but a quiet validation, the kind earned from turning adversity into advancement. At the reception desk near the elevators, a desk attendant rose abruptly, her face flushed with recognition. "Miss Foster," she said, voice tentative, "I'm truly sorry for the earlier mix-up. It was unacceptable." I paused, meeting her gaze without accusation. "No need to apologize to me," I replied evenly. "Save it for those who might face the same treatment tomorrow. Ensure it doesn't repeat." Her eyes widened, absorbing the implication, as I pressed the down button. The exchange lingered, a small ripple in the system's vast currents, reminding me how individual encounters could seed broader shifts. The elevator descended smoothly, depositing me in the lobby where the morning's confrontation had ignited. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warmer now in the afternoon slant. I crossed the marble expanse, blouse still crisp despite the day's demands, my stride unhurried. Outside, the capital's bustle enveloped me, honking taxis, pedestrians weaving through crosswalks, but I felt anchored, gaze steady on the horizon. What began as humiliation had evolved into a testament, my composure the true weapon that dismantled barriers without a single raised voice. The building receded behind me, a chapter closed, leaving only forward momentum. 3 days later, as I reviewed after-action reports from my secure office overlooking the Potomac, a ping alerted me to an internal forum thread gaining traction within defense command channels. It was anonymous, but the post's circulation, flagged by monitoring algorithms, drew my attention amid routine scans. The author, likely a mid-tier analyst based on phrasing, detailed the incident with unflinching candor. "I used to dismiss Black Talon as hype," the entry began, a fancy label for someone buried in paperwork. Then I saw Camille Foster halted at the gate, treated like clerical overflow, dismissed without a second thought. Moments later, she commanded the entire strategic session, dissecting threats with insight none of us could match. It wasn't just skill, it was poise under erasure. The narrative unfolded, recounting the guard's skepticism, the clerk's blockade, and the colonel's intervention, painting a vivid contrast between initial disdain and eventual deference. Comments flooded in. One from a logistics officer admitted, "Witnessed it unfold. Made me question how many talents we sideline daily." Another, from CyberOps, added, "Her handling turned a glitch into a masterclass on overlooked potential." The core reflections struck deepest. From this, one takeaway stands clear. In the quietest figures often lurk forces capable of reshaping entire structures. It resonated, echoing my own journey through undervalued roles to pivotal command. Shares proliferated, reaching peripheral units, sparking discussions on implicit biases in clearance procedures. Oversight teams noted the buzz, initiating quiet reviews of entry logs for patterns. I didn't respond. Anonymity preserved the raw honesty. Instead, I archived the thread, a digital artifact of transformation. At 38, such validations weren't novelties, but this one carried weight, evidence that a single day's friction could ignite systemic introspection. The forum's momentum grew, threads branching into proposals for bias training modules, crediting the event as catalyst. In the quiet of my workspace, I felt the day's echoes evolve into lasting waves, where one overlooked arrival compelled a network to confront its blind spots. 1 month later, as I returned to the facility for a follow-up audit on Raven Echo's implementation, the entrance lobby felt subtly altered, a quiet evolution in the architecture of respect. Sunlight filtered through the fortified windows, casting elongated shadows across the marble, but my eyes were drawn to a new addition beside the digital identification scanners, a modest bronze plaque, mounted at eye level for every entrant to absorb. The inscription gleamed under the lights, etched in precise lettering. Not all authority requires a uniform. Not every leader demands immediate recognition. Yet every individual, regardless of appearance, deserves dignity from the very first encounter. Beneath it, in finer script, my name stood as quiet testament: Camille Foster, codename Black Talon. I paused before it, fingers tracing the cool metal edge, the words resonating like a final directive from a mission debrief. It wasn't a monument to ego, it was a policy etched in permanence, born from that morning's friction. Whispers from passing staff confirmed its origin. Oversight had mandated it after reviewing the incident logs, turning my understated arrival into a mandated lesson for the entire command structure. A young recruit, badge fresh on his chest, lingered nearby, reading the plaque with furrowed brows. He glanced at me, hesitation flickering before recognition dawned. "Ma'am," he ventured, voice tentative yet earnest, "is this about you?" I met his gaze, offering a faint smile, the kind that conveyed volumes without elaboration. "It's about everyone," I replied softly. "Remember it next time you man a gate." He nodded slowly, the words sinking in as he straightened, a subtle shift in his stance. As I moved on, the plaque remained, a silent sentinel challenging assumptions in this hub of power. It encapsulated the day's legacy, not vengeance, but a ripple of equity, ensuring future arrivals face scrutiny tempered by humanity. In the capital's relentless pace, that small bronze marker endured, a closing statement on transformation, where one woman's quiet endurance reshaped the unseen hierarchies binding us all.